Hello, and welcome to the Real Ram Fam. On my channel, I intend to provide you with a safe platform to discuss the intersections of your entire being, to be able to be comfortable in your own skin, in mission, or position. There is no one like you, and we all have a purpose and message. I, for one, am a black woman, mother of four, a military veteran, and a wife, and a social worker, just to name a few. From my channel, I hope that you learn more about military families and social workers. Three of the social work values are my aim in each video: importance of human relationships, dignity and worth of the person, and social justice. No matter what you initially think when you hear social worker, there is more to the profession. Trust me. Stay locked in by subscribing to the channel, and be sure that you hit that notifications bell so you don't miss any new uploads. Without further ado, on to today's episode.
What's up, everybody? Hopefully you guys can join me a little bit later as we continue on with this conversation. I know normally I let y'all know in advance what I'm going to talk about, but tonight, you know what? There's nothing wrong with doing something different. So, as I put out another video earlier, April is Autism Awareness Month. It is also the month of the military child. And so I'm going to do something a little bit differently this time. So I already shared a little educational video letting you know all about autism. And once you meet one child with autism, does not mean you've met every child with autism. And so today, hopefully I can get my other two guests to come on to join this conversation with me. What I'm going to do today is we are going to talk about Family Matters and Steve Urkel. We all were introduced to Steve Urkel back in the 90s. He was introduced to us. Let's do it that way. He was introduced to us as this super nerd, right? This nerd who was overly obsessed with Laura Winslow. But he was highly intelligent. We all thought everything he did was so funny. His old, did I do that? And all of this, right? But if you go back to your teenage self or however old you were in the 90s, back then, that was all we really recognized, right? The dude with the suspenders, he was super smart and all of the STEM. We didn't call it STEM back then, but he was super smart in the science and the math. He had the nerdy glasses, the suspenders, the high water pants. He had his catchphrase, and he was obsessed with Laura. Also, he had a thing with cheese. That was his thing, right? Now, going back as an adult and looking at Steve Urkel and looking at him also with my trained eye, right? A little bit of my trained eye in mental health and learning more about autism. And we can throw in ADHD if you want, but we're going to try to keep it separate. ADHD is not the same as autism. I think he was on the spectrum disorder. Okay. So, sorry, I had a message. So, in case you did not get what I had shared with you earlier, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share this real quick so we can all be on the same page. So, I'm going to share my screen, this window with you. But, of course, right? The browser is not going to share, is not giving me access. Try capturing a different screen to see if it continues. Okay, I'm going to try one more time to see if I can share this with you. But it's the picture that I shared in the previous video describing to you what autism looks like. Okay, this look like this. This ain't trying to work with me. So I'm just going to read it to you. Universal Trade Stat all children or people with autism share is a hyper or hypoactivity to sensory input. That is sound, sight, smell, all your five senses. They're hyper or hypoactive to that, right? Then there's social and communication skills. These are the things that you may be familiar with. Then they have a fixated interest that is considered abnormal. The picture here on this is showing people who draw, and then there's gaming. But no matter what it is, they're fixated on a particular thing. Nowadays, how doctors quickly diagnose this is because they may be obsessed with dinosaurs, Legos, games, and maybe even people. There are children who can also maybe like recite the whole encyclopedia or something like that, and you'd be like, what? At like young ages. They have an attachment to the sameness and routines and behaviors. You may think that that may be like OCD, but no, they have to have the same routine over and over again. They have difficulties in relationships and development and maintenance. And in this picture also is showing the relation of space, that they're not pretty much aware of how close they are to people. And then the repetitive behaviors, interests, and activities. These are just some of the basic signs that everyone with autism share together. So let's bring this back around to Steve Urkel. Although, let's talk about all the 90s TV shows. Every 90s TV show, everybody got to get up and get in each other's face to talk. That's one thing I don't get. I don't understand. I don't understand that. Why everybody got to be in each other's face to talk? Why they got to stand up? But what I wish I could do was like share a couple of episodes, a couple clips from episodes, but I haven't figured out how to not get copywritten for things. But you may go back on your own and go check out some episodes, or maybe you can remember for yourself. But when Steve Urkel talked to people, he was right in their faces when he spoke. And he wasn't really aware of how close or how far he was to them. The repetitive behavior and interest, that's where the mice, and the cheese comes into play. Also, let's go ahead and say Laura. This dude was hyper fixated on Laura, no matter how she mistreated him. And I've been watching it with my little kids. So we're on like season 7 or 8. I think like season 8, all the way from the beginning. So he started liking her at like the age of 8 years old, all the way, all the way through freaking high school, all the way through, no matter how well she treated him. And let's not forget, he had a girlfriend. He had a girlfriend, Myra. And it took a long time for him to accept Myra and leave Laura the heck alone. But his clone, Stefan Urkel, shared that same freaking fixation on Laura. I don't know how one person can be so fixated on one person for like forever, regardless of what they did, how they treated them. He was hyper fixated on her. The attachment to the sameness and routines and behaviors. We didn't know what kind of routines he had until he moved in with the Winslows, and you may not even be familiar of when that happened. But he did. This was when his parents moved overseas, and he stated that every night before he went to bed, he played the I'm drawing a blank, but oh, if I had somebody help me, the freaking that that instrument that he played, that thing. It'll come to me later, but he had to play that every night. And then there was an episode where he was playing like the triangles, but he always had to play some instrument over and over again before he went to bed. And he had to play multiple instruments, as a matter of fact. And I believe he also had to eat a particular thing before he went to bed. It may not have always been cheese or not even cheese only, but maybe like cheese and chocolate milk or something. Don't quote me. But the same routine every night. That's what he had to do. Now, they didn't really show that he had any hyper or hyposensitivity to sensory things. He wasn't sensitive to sound or smell or anything like that, but that I can recall. But he had it. Now, one thing that people with autism tend to also have is a lack of empathy. They cannot necessarily understand when you may be hurting or when they have hurt your feelings. Oh, Steve Urkel, he had a sense of that. But once he had it, oh, he was off the charts with it. And that's what people was not understanding and wasn't getting about him. Oh, the ukulele. Okay, that's what it was. So hopefully Miss Will can come in and she can stay in. So let's see. Can you hear me? Gotta unmute yourself. No, she kind of still frozen right now. But I'm gonna leave her right there and see if maybe she can join later. Your body is moving, but you're still muted. So while she's working that out, okay. I heard something. So I was saying his level of empathy. There are repeated episodes of him telling the Winslow family how they need to learn to appreciate each other and love each other, and how this thing or that thing is not right. Though his parents didn't show him love, he showed so much love to the Winslow family despite how they mistreated him. He would tell Carl all the time how he's the best father in the world, that he's the best cop in the world. He would tell Eddie how he's his best friend and he would overprotect him, and all of it's just crazy the level of empathy that he had. He did not like when the Winslow family got into fights and arguments and disagreements. And he took very good care of little Richie. So he could read the faces to understand when people were hurting. But when it came to himself, he didn't really show much that he was sad or hurt. But I'm gonna tell you one thing that he did, what Steve Urkel did do, and he did it very well, because he is on a different part of the spectrum where he doesn't have any problems with communication. It's him advocating for himself. And he would let you know that this particular thing isn't nice or whatever. And he stood up for himself. He stood up to bullies. And they want us to think that he's just the regular old nerd or whatever. And what were we normally taught? We were taught that you got to stand up to the bully at least one time and they'll leave you alone. No one ever left Steve Urkel alone. Never. But he always stood up for himself. People on the autism spectrum may or may not do that, and they may not communicate well, but Steve Urkel did. And let me tell you something else about Steve Urkel, but they underappreciated and undervalued, and it's like they forgot that they wrote this. But Steve Urkel was very good at martial arts. There was an episode where he was like a black belt in some things, and he came through and he kicked butt. There was another episode where he saved Carl and Eddie at the pool hall, because he figured out mathematically how to put them balls in. The boy was outrageous. I mean, because he's a nerd and he's a highly functional nerd. So much so to where we no longer use the term Asperger's, but he's very highly functional. He's a genius. Also, this dude was so good in math. He even figured out the equations and stuff. Remember, they put him on the basketball team. They wanted him just to be the mascot, but he was so good at figuring out freaking the freaking angles and everything. And then the dude had skills. This dude came to the rescue so many times because he was a mathematical genius. This dude was a scientific genius. How can one clone themselves? And all the other experiments that he did, he was not simply a nerd like they wanted us to believe. STEM, that's everything: science, technology, engineering, arts, and the music. He did all five. All five. He was a highly functional person. What else can we say? If there's anyone out here who is watching who has questions about autism, or even just Steve Urkel, you got something that you want to say? Because he wasn't just a nerd. Because I'm trying. There's a whole lot I can say about that show, but I'm trying to keep it. I'm trying to keep it just talking about autism and how them just trying to write him as a nerd undersold their ability to teach us in the Black community about autism. And then even today when they show us someone who has autism, like I watched the show The Good Doctor, and when they show that person who has autism, which even in that show, they have also called him a savant because he has the ability to remember things just off of sight. He remembers the photos. And so when they show him going into action, we gotta freeze the frame, and they've got pictures and everything of how his mind is working, and we're just watching all these miracle things occur when this person with autism is going into work. And they show his awkwardness with people, of how he's straight to the point and says what he has to say. Hey, Davida. They show he's awkward, and they also show that he has the difficulty looking at people. That's how it differs between them showing possibly Steve Urkel versus him. He can't look at people. He communicates weirdly, but he has the ability to excel so much that he has become a surgeon. And it takes a lot of focus to become a surgeon. Now, both of them took all of their focus, their attention, and they don't have friends. That's the thing. They're so socially awkward. You can't have friends because they're super focused on the thing that it is that they have to do, and there's no emotion when they make decisions. There's no time for the emotion. And in The Good Doctor, we watch him grow. We watch him go from a guy who is so completely stringent and strict in his lack of emotion and empathy, to someone's taking the time to show him how you properly communicate with people, how he should try this method over that method. But then with Steve Urkel, They don't do that. They just keep showing him how awkward he is and keep teasing him and avoiding him, taking advantage of him, getting what they want and what they need out of him. No one takes the time to say, hey, Steve, we don't really like it when you do blah, blah, blah. For instance, there's just 2 or 3 episodes where Steve takes private conversations that he heard in the Winslow household as it relates to Eddie and his dealings with women. But because Steve is not reading the room, he does not have the ability to read the room, he busts Eddie's bubble. And he says, because there is the one when they're in the locker room and they're talking about, they didn't use the word did he hit back then, but they were talking about the fact that the one girl is loose and they wanted to know if Eddie slept with her or whatever. And then Steve busts his bubble and was like, no, Eddie did not, because Eddie is still a virgin. And he's like, he can't read the room. And he's like, but I heard you tell your dad. And he keeps going. And Eddie's trying to stop him. And he's like, but I heard you tell your dad. That happened in one season. And then it happened again in another season. Well, he just cannot read the room. Then the other one wasn't about Eddie, but it was about the dude who led everyone to believe that he slept with Laura. And again, because he's so obsessed with Laura and he's trying to protect Laura, Laura's going off on him. But Steve is like, I can't read the room. I don't care. I'm going to bust you out in front of the whole school because it's the right thing to do. But here on The Good Doctor, so my point was, no one took time to say, Steve, when you overhear conversations in my house, that stays in our house. Hey, you are my friend. This stays between you and I. And no one ever took the time throughout all those years, from 8 years old to 18, 21, or however old he is when Family Matters goes off the air. No one took the time to groom him, to hone his communication skills, his social skills. No one ever did that. They just kept with he's awkward, and I just need you. I need your money. They took his money. I need your money. I need your talent. I need all these things from you, but I'm going to continue to avoid you. Whereas The Good Doctor, they took the time to help him relate to other people. So you're asking me, am I saying there's not enough range in autism shows and characters, or that it's not addressed in Black characters versus white characters? I am saying both of those things. Now, because I don't know for a fact if Steve Urkel has autism, I am just laying it out there. I am saying that when I look back at it today, he's displaying things that says he might be on the spectrum. He may very well be. But they want us to believe that he's just simply a nerd. His behaviors are not just simply nerd behaviors. Nerds are smart. Nerds are a little weird and quirky, but nerds still have the ability to read the room. Nerds have the ability to communicate. Nerds have the ability to make friends. Nerds, he's not simply a nerd. He seems to be on the spectrum. Now, as far as them showing a range in between black and white, I believe so, but I can't think of. I should Google it or Chat GPT it right now to see about other shows of other characters and see how they are displayed. I think Rain Man, that's a white show, a white movie. Rain Man was on the spectrum disorder. This is showing me about role models. I should have put this in Chat GPT because Google isn't telling me anything. I'm just doing, it's telling me top 10, the 10 TV characters with spectrum disorder. Julia from Sesame Street. Oh, Abed Nadir. Abed Nadir from the Community. It says he is not officially identified with with Asperger's. Still in the pilot, a fellow character lashes out at him and tells him that he has it. I bet. I have to go back and look at that. I bet might be. Max Braverman from Parenthood. I don't know. Dr. Isidore from Chicago Med. Don't even watch that show. I don't know. Look at this. Dr. Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. Don't watch that show, but that's another white person. So Dr. Sean Murphy from The Good Doctor. That's what I'm talking about. Sam Gardner, atypical. Don't know what that is, but it's probably somebody white. Jerry somebody from Boston Legal, white again. Another doctor. Spencer Reed from Criminal Minds. Sherlock Holmes. They're saying that. So that says top 10. There is an article that does say that we need to see more Black people on TV identify as being on the spectrum disorder. So yeah, it's true. And when they show it, Dion, there is a Black show. There is a Black character named Dion who is also a superhero. I don't know if it's Marvel or DC. He may or may, although it didn't pull up. It did not pull up on this list that I just showed. But because of the way that they made Dion, he might be on the spectrum too, for the same reasons that I am explaining about Steve Urkel. For the very same reasons. So if you get a chance to go back and watch Dion, or is it called Raising Dion? No, it's just called Dion. So, and then Mimi says our parents never believe in kids having disabilities. So that's another thing. But again, with Steve Urkel being a TV character, are you saying that that could contribute to why they wouldn't say that he has a disorder? Because it was, what are you saying right there? Because we are just talking about the TV show. Because I think that would make sense. We would never name it for sure. We would never name it, but to build a character and simply name him a nerd. But looking back at it now, he clearly fits all the criteria of being on the autism spectrum. This was an interdiction. You mean interdiction? Do you mean now my mind is drawing a blank. Implied? You mean the implication? What was the implication? So we are going to definitely talk specifically about some children that are on the autism spectrum disorder before this month ends. But I thought that this would be a nice introduction to talk about a TV character, and especially one whom we may have all overlooked because of the way that they introduced him to us. For people to know that something was off about him. Yeah. So I am not going to keep you all long, especially since this was an unannounced episode. Yeah, so like I said, we're gonna talk about some real life people that we know who are on the autism spectrum disorder. But looking at Steve Urkel, who was introduced to us as a nerd, as someone who was quirky, and as you think about other people or other characters who have been undervalued, underrated, mislabeled, mistreated, or what have you, just realize that they may have autism and you just didn't understand. People who have sensitivities to sound, sight, smells, taste, what have you. The people who don't really talk and parents or whomever may have just labeled them as shy. They may be on the autism spectrum. Um, and Miss Antoinette says, see, because it was a long time ago, no one really wanted to talk about it in general. Yeah, it's okay. It is quite all right. We know she was having technical difficulties. So you all can continue to leave comments here so I can come back and follow up later. But yeah, so we're gonna have some shows, like I said. You all have a good night, and I'm gonna keep watching because I'm watching it with my little kids. I'm gonna keep watching Steve Urkel, Family Matters, and see how his journey and the family's ends. Because I so forgot. Throw it out there. I didn't know that Stefan Urkel stayed on the show, that he came back. I didn't realize that. But when we're talking about being obsessed with the person, yeah, he came back. And when we come back and we just talk about the show in general, I got some stuff to say about that show. I really do. I got some stuff to say about that show. So I hope you all had a nice introduction to autism, have another way of looking at Steve Urkel and the nerds out here that you know. Thank you all for joining, and a good night to the rest of you as well.
I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I would like to thank my guests for joining me, or simply thank you for watching the pre recorded episode. No matter what your birth order is, how you self identify, and whether you like pancakes or waffles. If this is the first time you're hearing it today, I want you to know that you are loved. You were put here for a purpose that only you can fulfill. Until next time, take care of yourself. Be sure that you like and share the videos, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notifications bell. This is Real Ram out.